Alright, so we are back, and we're going to continue moving towards unlocking an elite spec, and also since we just arrived here in the first Pathfire map, so we're here in Amnoon, Crystal Oasis, we're also, since we're right here, going to access a couple of the mastery points that are here. There's one here, which you can see. There's one out here, which we can't see yet. One over here, which we can't see yet. So that'll get us towards advancing Raptor as we gain the necessary experience. And then once we've knocked out a few of those things that are like right here, easy targets, then we'll start moving towards gaining access to the Heart of Thorns maps as well. And that's going to further enable us to work towards getting Reaper, which is ultimately kind of the real first step towards being able to play in the way we want to
You're
play.
going to help me make our house specialty, the Gene Stew.
I find this mastery point to be equally entertaining
This is a good
and
time
frustrating.
to add in some coconut milk. So fetch me some coconuts.
And immediately something that I can't find. I thought it was like right over here. Oh man, I'm gonna fail right from the get-go. Ah, coconuts. Oh, that's not him.
Better luck next time.
Yeah. What a jerk. Alright.
Let's see if you have what it takes to be my sous chef, Outlander. You're going to help me make our house specialty, the Gene Stew. I call for an ingredient, you throw it. Got it?
Got it.
Water, quick!
Oh, that's flour. I hate it when he runs. I lose time when he runs because I miss him, which is frustrating.
What's taking so long? You'd better not be drinking that chicken stock.
Why would I do that? Why would I drink the chicken stock, dude?
Get that roasted meat over here to me now!
What? That wasn't good. I'm doing terrible.
Spiky fruit, hurry! Yellowfin tuna meat is actually ruby red, if that's what's tripping you up. Where's that water? Better luck next time.
Oh my gosh. Disastrous. Absolutely disastrous.
Let's see if you have what it takes to be my sous chef, Outlander. You're going to help me make our house
So they did
specialty,
take this
the
mastery
Gene
point
Stew.
and
I
turn it
call
into
for
an event
ingredient, you throw
on a
it. Got it? Where's the boar meat?
Ice
It
Brood
can't be
Saga.
left out too long.
The first Ice Brood Saga map. They made an event using the same mechanic. I like it
Where's
more
my shark meat? Hurry up!
as an event than I do as a mastery point. I don't know why that is. Maybe
that
I get
cactus meat didn't just walk out of my kitchen.
maybe I just get
so
frustrated
it must be here.
with the mastery point. Not sure.
Hurry up with the coconuts. I need that milk.
Whatever the case. Yeah, not doing well right now. It's unfortunate.
This is a good time to add in some coconut milk. So fetch me some coconuts. Even you could probably find flour in a kitchen. Where's that water?
Come on, man. Go where you're going.
Find me that honey. Can't wait to cook up that imported Shiver Peak salmon. So why am I waiting?
Oh, no. Here he goes.
spiky fruit adds a nice, sharp flavor. Get me one.
That's
Now,
not a good pun.
There's nothing like fresh-caught yellowfin tuna.
There's literally nothing
So
about
find
that
it
pun
for
that's
me.
good.
Quick, grab that boar meat so I can get it cubed and spiced.
So one thing that the event in
Never mind.
the
why.
Iceberg Saga
Just
map,
get me
can't
those
remember what it's
books.
called
You're
right
actually
at this
a nearly
second, but
passable sous chef. At the very least, you're
it
quicker
adds
wit than those
an
greedy
additional
fools
mechanic
over
where you
there.
can dice it or roast it or grill it or whatever. And so that adds a whole nother, because then he'll ask for something like, hey, I want the cactus, dice it up for me, so then gives you a little bit of extra runaround. Like I said, plays much better, in my opinion, as an event than it does as Master Point. We'll go with the same thing underwater right now. Again, I hate going full minion, but it's effective for what we're trying to achieve at this point in our account's evolution, so to speak. This is where a skimmer would be nice. Obviously, we're not there yet. That would be the fastest way for us to get to where we're going. Ooh, just made it.
Those drakes are eating all the fish!
So we'll come over here, start getting our hero points. So we can, as few as 30 hero points, or 3 of the hero point events on this map, can get us access to Reaper. But at that point, without any of the traits associated with it, it is probably less than optimal. The other thing that's a little bit of an issue, which I'm kind of disappointed with, I actually bought this count several days ago, and I let some time pass, hoping to burn off some of the time that is required to pass in order to gain access to the trading post and to the gems that this order came with, etc. Apparently that timer doesn't start until I actually logged in, so I still have the massive amount of time before I can get like the axe I want or something like that. That's a disappointment. Having said that, we should still be able to complete a number of these. This is one of the ones that I do sometimes have trouble with. I think just because of the mobility that this guy has, which we're going to see about now. Just the same. It's looking like he's going to be pretty manageable. So one thing where, had I gone Mechanist instead of Reaper, my access to crowd control, to skills to break the break bar there, would be easier. I don't know that. I haven't done the math to say which class actually has the most access, but certainly Engineer and
Just up here?
the variation, the the elite specs of Engineer have an immense access to crowd control. The same is true of Revenant. Revenant has significant access. Mesmer can, depending on how you set it up. Warrior can, depending on how you set it up. Necromancer can, but as I'm currently set up, I don't have as much. What do we got going on over here? There's what I actually want.
The air attends my whim.
Time to do. They'll have to hit much harder.
Even the power of water is at my command.
So here, pretty soon, we're actually going to be very close to
Replenishing.
being able to unlock, as I mentioned earlier, able to unlock Reaper. I just don't think I'm going to start
The
utilizing
magic
it
is unstable. I'm returning
until
to the
I've
bottle.
accessed at least a few of the traits. So maybe somewhere around 80 hero points, which is not a crazy amount. Like, that's pretty easy, pretty achievable in a relatively short period of time, with limited access to mounts and gliding, stuff like that. We can still get there easy enough. And speaking of masteries, we're already 1 master point on the Raptor. That's good.
You should have seen these back when they were... Watch the sequence I light up for you. The pattern completes repeated by touching the switches in the same order. You have a quick mind. Let's continue to up the challenge.
I'd forgotten this one was here, but this one's not
You're on a roll.
terribly difficult, so another one that we can get to pretty
Keep going.
quick. There we go.
Wonderful, just wonderful. Seems like old times. All that's missing from this experience is a good old-fashioned Heist attack. That's
So
how I
occasionally, this twister will sneak up on me a little bit and embarrass me. But again, this is where full minion proves advantageous. That's far less likely to happen under the current circumstances of the current setup. Where he tends to get me is if I'm going with like some kind of glass cannon. If I come down here with a full Zerker thief, the margin of error is slimmer, and every now and then Twister will get me.
Just one more confirmation of how great I am.
Got roll.
Mine.
There's
All
our great
mine.
sword. So one thing we're not going to have to purchase when we make the transition to Reaper is great sword. And then eventually, we could convert that exotic greatsword to an ascended. That actually is a fairly comprehensive process. I don't know that I would even say it's hard. but it requires potentially multiple completions of Dragon Stand. It would require extensive play of Heart of Thorns. You have to access certain masteries, like the Stealth Detection Mastery, which is one of the ones that I'd like to unlock anyway. Though it's of a lower priority than some of the others, but yeah, we're not going to be trying to do that in this series. If this were going to be my main account in some way, then I would take the time to do that. Oh, yeah. Guess who doesn't have gliding yet? All right, that's fine. Embarrassing. Deeply embarrassing. All right. Let's grab one more mastery point, then let's go ahead and make that transition to Heart of Thorns. And then I will have gliding. All the more reason, if anything, that was a clear demonstration of why I need to get my hands on gliding.
Hey, these rooftops are private property. Anyone looking to jump just better do it carefully. Hate to see our roof damaged by some raptor pushed into stunt jumping.
Alright. Had to get that out of my system. So as with Path of Fire, yeah. Sure, why not? Thank you. As with Path of Fire, entering Heart of Thorns is going to require us to go through a story instance. Probably comparable in length. I would say of the 3 expansions, the one that takes the most time to access in terms of the initial story instance is probably End of Dragons. Or at least it feels that way to me. Now, a lot of this can kind of be bypassed. Like, we don't have to have that conversation right there. If I remember correctly, we don't necessarily need to have these conversations either. But because I'm not 100% sure, I guess we'll take the time to do so. Unfortunately, they will not talk with us until these foes are defeated. Alright, Rox, what you got?
Glad you're here. They say Mordremoth wiped out the
I
entire
am also glad I'm here.
fleet. The news
If there are 2
has
people who are
crossed
glad
my
that I'm
little
here,
anxious.
it's me.
I mean, because Destiny's Edge was on board. I hope they're okay.
I'm with Frostbite. Boss, Destiny's Edge, and Airship.
So I did definitely feel,
How did it go so wrong this time?
without
We're about to
going
see
too
for
depth into the
ourselves.
story right now,
I need you
because
two
I'll,
at the
the
staging
time will
area
come
near
to that.
Amber Sandfall and ready to go when
I do
arrive.
feel that the story at this point in the game's evolution,
Sounds good. See you
that
soon.
being, kind of, season 1 was not particularly good. I think the nostalgia I feel towards season 1 has to do with, the fact that the game in general was new to me at that point in time. Everything was exciting.
Think the gods you're here, boss.
But I do think season 2 is pretty underrated as a story
We did verify that
versus,
Kate has been through here in the last
some
day
of
or
the
so.
other stuff. Season 3 and Pathfire, which I thought
We'll
were
get the
vastly
impact, but right
overrated.
now our top priority is Mordremoth. What's the situation here?
So we definitely don't have to defend Amber Sandfall. We don't have to deal with any of this.
Red and rocks went to red.
I never made it to Camp Resolve. Once I heard the fleet had been attacked, I knew I'd be needed here.
So it's even worse than it looks. You can count on us, boss. We're ready to go. Just say the word.
Consider it said. Finish up what you're doing and meet me on the edge of the jungle. We'll all go in together.
Good. First my sister, then the Zephyrite Masters, now the Pact Fleet. Mordramoth has to be stopped for good.
So the nice thing
Another personal victory.
about all 3 of the expansions is that once you've got one character to access those spaces, then ultimately there becomes some mechanism by which your other characters can access it. Heart of Thorns is the most forgiving.
Stay sharp, people.
In that
Mordramoth hit the pact hard.
once you walk through
It's
that
up to
portal
us
we
to
just
pick
walked
up the
through
pieces.
with one character to enter this story instance, any other character can simply go through Silver Waste, walk through that portal, and be in Heart of Thorns playing area.
Bram, get back
And I
here.
really, really like that. With Path of Fire, yeah, once one character has accessed Path of Fire regions, other characters can like waypoint friend and stuff. But the readily accessible mechanism doesn't show up until after you've completed a Path of Fire playthrough, when you can get it where the griffins are and all that business. So it's a
Bram,
device
you can't just run off
thing.
like
It's
that. We're in enemy territory.
it's an item
glad to
that
see
you
you survived.
use that will then
I need a
take you
status
to
report
that
now.
location, and that way you
You're
can
a
gain
welcome
access
sight,
to the
Commander.
Path of Fire maps.
The situation is grim.
Or there was
Mordramoth tore the fleet apart.
a VIP area
Pact is in ruins.
that you could use
Traherne
as
and
well. It was
Destiny's
kind of a
Edge were
bypass
taken
for all
prisoner.
that. But that
They were
required extra
alive.
money. So none of that
Now
to me was
am I.
terribly great. Again, it's
The
nice
Roman
once you've completed it
soldiers
with
no
one
longer
character
trust
that
me.
the other characters can go there.
And you're
But it
surprised?
required a full playthrough, which I
Scarlet,
don't love.
Aaron, and now
With
this?
End of Dragons, it
Mordramoth
takes place
always
kind of
uses
midway
survival to
through
do its
when you gain
dirtiest
access to
deeds.
Arborstone,
We
and
need
then
to
other
strengthen the
characters can,
defenses around
if
here.
you can just take
Our
that Arborstone
priority
pass,
has to
you
be
can drop it in
salvaging
your
weapon
shared
parts from the
inventory
crash
here,
sites.
and other characters
Our
can
comrades in
then
the cavern.
gain
The
access
Pact
that
does
way.
not
That
abandon
is
its own.
good. I still like the Heart of
So,
Thorns method
there
the
is no
most,
more
which
pact,
was that you can
and
just
the
walk through the
prisoners you
portal.
want to save are
That
probably
for
already
me
dead.
was,
Think it through, soldier.
remains kind of optimal.
We need greater numbers, or any salvage party we send will disappear like the others.
Servant of
This
God,
isn't helping.
walk this land.
Just tell us where Destiny's Edge is, please.
Larenthir, stand by. I need to think this through.
I don't need to think it through.
Everyone listen up. We've suffered a serious setback, but we're far from beaten. Larenthir is still your commanding officer, and he has my full confidence. Clear?
Yes, Commander.
Alright, let's get moving.
Larenthir will join the search and
It's enough chit chat.
Stop them! Keep them away from the cages!
Can anyone hear me? We're up here.
Commander, did you hear that?
So one thing that
Came
Heart of
from above
Thorns
us,
did
at the top of those stairs.
well, in my opinion,
The enemy keeps collecting
was
corpses
put
and
the
prisoners.
player in a position to
This is the
make
first time we've had any
decisions
sign
that
of where
felt
they wind up.
They'll have to hit much harder.
like they were decisions that did not have a definitive right or wrong. You could have gone either way. So when it came to coming to try to find these folks and rescue them, like from a tactical point of view, there's a very compelling argument not to do so. And I can see, scenarios, even in, as someone who's spent over 2 decades in the military, where in real life you wouldn't necessarily make that decision. It would, you'd have to assess the tactical situation, what you actually have accessible in terms of force and the enemy situation and so forth. So for me, it's always the right decision. again, but also based off 2+ decades in the military, but it's not a black or white decision. And Heart of Thorns did that pretty well.
Welcome, Father. Mortimer has plans for you.
You know, when Guild Wars was kind of, when their story writing was at their worst and it was very comic booky, I didn't feel like that was the case as often. I felt like
There is no escape, Commander.
you know, it felt very Scooby-Doo, and the bad guys were very clearly bad guys. The bad things were very clearly bad things because they were so outlandish. So I don't love playing through this instance these days simply because you know, it's time consuming. It's that much more time that I'm not actually in Verdant Brink progressing what I want to, which is masteries and hero points. It at least is thematically something that I can get on board with.
We'd better get back to camp.
Glad you're alive. Feared the worst when you went missing. What went on here?
Mortimer's forces overpowered us. They locked us up here with corpses from the crash site. They took the others south to join the Jungle Dragon's army. We would have been next. We didn't break. And now we're going to give Mortimer's horde a taste.
So this, what we're seeing right here,
I hope this
that's a temporary post-processing bug that
this doesn't have to be a total disaster.
that just was introduced with the last patch. I'm sure they'll sort it out any day. If you've never seen Guild Wars 2 before, and you happen to have the misfortune of watching my video is your introduction to Guild Wars 2, then one, like, God save you, like, you've really made a mistake. But two, do keep in mind that is not generally how the graphics appear in that sense. That is a bug. I've never seen that bug before. It was just introduced in the last patch. I'm sure they'll sort through it. Probably has to do with something that they're working on graphically. You know, with one of the upcoming story instances where they want to show something in a certain way, and they accidentally
Everybody
broke their
form up
water.
and do your jobs. It's a long time until daylight.
So, kind of coming back to something I was talking about earlier, I do think Heart of Thorns, from a military perspective, and I've thought about, and still may, do something on YouTube or whatever about, video games from an actual real-world military perspective. Having said that, plenty of people have done that. It's not original, so I don't know that I really have much to bring to the table at that point. But Heart of Thorns probably does the second best from a military standpoint at showing these types of things. Drizzlewood Coast is probably the best. It's also the one that is most heavily reliant or predicated on military concepts. There are some things that they definitely get wrong, definitely get right. It does have one really blatant example of a time when the game presents something as wrong that tactically is extremely sound and would be considered a good decision in almost any military in the world.
Be the next one to go.
And I suppose on my story playthrough, if I actually make it to Drizzlewood, because that will be 150 or so hours worth of story into the story playthrough. But if I make it that far, then I can go quite a bit more in depth on that kind of pet peeve of mine, where there is something that is very clearly a tactically sound decision that the commander bemoans the decision. If I were to make a list of characters that I don't like in Guild Wars 2, I think the commander would actually appear on the list, which is kind of a conversation pretty well removed from what's taking place right now, and a conversation that doesn't have a lot to do with what we're seeing right now in terms of Heart of Thorns, because Heart of Thorns does not play into that nearly as much as some of the other content. But at some point, the commander just really kind of starts looking like an idiot. It starts looking extremely selfish, extremely self-absorbed, self-righteous. It kind of becomes laborious. So coming up here in just a minute, we will have what was, at the time a lot of players first saw it, really one of the better, I don't want to say cinematic sequences, because that's not the case, but one of the better moments in Guild Wars 2's story. And it is, like so much their story, it is a little bit comic booky, but for folks who are big fans of the game, when it happened, it was certainly cool. So we'll get to that in just a second. So that right there, I do like that. That's the hammer thing was good. But then she eats it, so I mean, she had her moment, I guess. But this right here was like super cool. First time, we're not gonna watch the whole cutscene. It's unnecessary. And the dialogue is typical, like ArenaNet kind of silliness. But so, without going into the story too much at this particular point in time, like, oh man, I'm gonna go right off that cliff. You know, someone that we definitely thought was gone, and we didn't know when they were going to be returning. And of course, there had been enough spoilers that we knew that Ridlock would be returning during this expansion. But at that moment, on your first playthrough, and particularly since I think for me it was like 5 in the morning on the day of release when I played through this instance, that was, you know, so that was the kind of anticipation that this first expansion had for me. That was very exciting. Good morning. Interestingly, the Heart of Thorns expansion, unlike the other expansions, was released at midnight or something. Midnight, I think their time, which I think was 3 a.m. when I was living on the East Coast, if I remember correctly.
Hope you don't mind me joining in, Commander.
So
like you could use some help.
I started downloading at 3 a.m., went to bed, woke back up at 5, and then started playing through, and obviously went straight into what you just saw for the last 20-25 minutes. So this, at that point in time, you know, I'm sitting there with a cup of coffee, playing what was the first new content in like 2 years, because there was an incredible content drought post season 2 before Heart
Let's
of
go,
Thorns.
Tribune. Time for us to kill another Elder Dragon.
It may not have been quite 2 years. It was definitely over a year. I don't remember the exact period of time. Whether it was 14, 18, 20 months, whatever it was. It was a very significant period of time. With essentially they did a couple of events to kind of prime the playing, you know, their fan community, their fan base for Heart of Thorns, but there hadn't been any new Living World or anything for an extensive period of time.
will remain here to secure the area.
Thank you, Commander. I'm headed to the high ground. That's where the Pale Reavers were trained to go. And do talk to some of the Pale Reavers we rescued. They may have overheard valuable intel while they were imprisoned.
Tribune, I saw you dive into the mists. Where did you end up? How did you learn new magic?
Alright. We don't need that dialogue right now. Let's take a little bit of time to try to get gliding. Because we're really not going to get... Let me see. I don't know that we'll be able to access any of the hero points here without without getting gliding. Ultimately, there may be a couple that we could get to, but would not. I mean, it would require traversing the map. Like, I can't think of any right off the back of my head. So let's look for some events. I do wish there we go. I do wish I had access to an axe. Oh, hey, buddy.
Arise, my creation.
That's exactly what we need. We need a handful of events. Unlock gliding. Then we can go about starting to get some hero points. Now, I could just be killing all these little jugglers that I come across along the way as well. There's a hero point up there. That's it right there. If I remember correctly, there is a way. I think this person's got the right idea. I think there is a way to access it without the you stupid smoke scale. Without the mushroom or gliding, which is normally what I would use. Normally, the mushroom right there, I take it, I bounce way up into the sky, and then glide across. That's, you know, on an account where I have the masteries that I want. That's just the easy way to do it. But I think these stairs right there should get me up to that one. So there is an example of at least one you can get without any gliding at all. But by and large, we're going to need that gliding. And the immediate temptation is going to be to then jump down from here. But, yeah, no gliding. So, fortunately, our mount will absorb some fall damage, and we can cruise right along. Do we want to go get the spider? How to get up there. It's going to be dead by the time I figure it out. I walked right by it. And yeah, it's going to be dead by the time I figure it out. So one thing about Heart of Thorns that I thought was particularly impressive, not that, now I'm way up here. I don't think I can, we'll try. No, oh, yep. Oh, there's another thing up there. I ain't going up there a second time. Ain't worth it. Of the 3 expansions, I think Heart of Thorns probably had the best music. The best soundtrack. Do I have any of these yet? So generally on a brand new account, I'll only open the large cargo until I have a stash of pry bars that is significant enough that that I am comfortable just, you know, grabbing whatever. What we got over here? Come on, you three. So I don't have a war horn. If I had a war horn, maybe I could. I don't remember if that's AoE swiftness or just. Are they stuck? Oh, they're stuck, aren't they? I don't need that nonsense. Primary goal be to keep looking for vents. I think we caught it when we're waiting on the meta. So we're kind of hung up here for a minute. If we come at the map at a different time, it'd be rife with events. And unfortunately, that's not the case.
May need our help. Let's send a party. Is it the entire fleet? Surely someone made it through. Not that I've heard. I think this has become a ground.
What we can do while we're waiting to stumble across events is unlock some of the waypoints, which will be helpful once we start bouncing around. Once we have the gliding, we can access a lot more of these. A lot more of the hero points.
Replenishing.
And so the waypoints that we access now will benefit us when that time comes.
Help us collect weapons so I can build a bar.
Alright, we got something going on up there. I think even this event requires gliding, if I remember correctly. I think you have to use updrafts or mushrooms, one or the other. So this mushroom will take you to that event. Since we're not there yet, in terms of our masteries, that's not going to be an option for us. There we go, we got something up here. Not anymore, we don't. I thought there was a stairwell here. Well, this is one of the things Mounts gives us. Sacrificial mount. Let's see if we can successfully defend this tower.
You'll never know.
You'll have to hit much harder.
what's interesting about Heart of Thorns gameplay at this point in time, and I find it particularly interesting when folks come into the game and talk about how surprised they are at the level of difficulty transitioning from whatever their experience prior to that was, whether it's whether they manually leveled the character or boosted it. There seems to be a feeling that Heart of Thorns is a considerable step up in terms of difficulty. And I think that is the case. I don't think that is untrue.
They'll have to hit much harder.
And yet it is considerably less difficult now than... well, that's a drag. Still got us a little bit closer to getting what we're trying to get here. But yes, considerably less difficult than it was upon release. Heart of Thorns was really quite hard when they initially released it, and that was somewhat exacerbated by the fact that we as players were not accustomed to... Oh, he didn't jump. Ha! Well, down we go. We as players were accustomed to very, very flat maps as well. So the combination of the verticality and the complexity of the map, which Verdant is relatively complex. Tangled Depths is, for folks who are not familiar with it, quite complex. That was a lot, even for experienced players. Not to say that folks didn't get the hang of it pretty quickly. I think a lot of folks did. Some folks did not. There were, certainly a handful of folks who either, left the game for a period of time or swore off certain content or whatever the case may be, because of their frustration with. What about that other event instead? That looks like a better rock. Well, let's see what these guys got going on. Because of their frustration with the expansion. And the thing is, I think when all right, good. When all is said and done,
Amayale provide. We still must hunt. May our arrows
Heart of Thorns may prove to be the best of the expansions. I consider it to be the best. For my money, we get the most from the expansion, and it probably offers the best content. With the notable exception that Path of Fire gave us mounts, and ArenaNet did a fantastic job. There we go, fine. I gotta be at combat. And ArenaNet did a fantastic job of their development of mounts. So kudos for that. Like, good on them for making Path of Fire good in that capacity. But in the grand scheme of things, as far as like a total or overall quality of an expansion, Heart of Thorns is probably the best one. But how much of that is after the fact, after they drastically changed the difficulty of the content from when it initially came out? I don't know. Let's get out of combat again. So I think in a minute what we do here, especially now that we have Gliding 1, we should be able to participate in some of the night bosses here. Of course, I will need to get out of this particular event. How much time we got? 2:48. Oh, yeah, we should be able to finish this event. So if we catch the one or two of the night bosses here following this event, I don't know that it really gets us any closer to some of this stuff that I spoke about wanting to work on, aside from... Oh, are we even going to succeed at this event? Like, come on, dude. This guy's dying. Aside from the added experience, but the experience and the potential for gold getting is worthwhile, you know, to kind of pursue the long-term goals. So even though it's going to take us a little bit off of, we get it? We did get it. It's going to take us a little bit away from this guy. From you know, trying to get the hero points, it'll take us closer to stuff as well. So worth the time investment in my opinion. And who knows? Maybe we will get an exotic axe on drop. That'd be great, since I need one, and I can't buy one for a few years. And there are actually some other options as well. There are other things I could do. There is, at one point in time, they had a contest, and players could design. Well, none of those was an axe though. It was a torch, a sword, and a greatsword. No. I'm sure there's a way of getting an exotic. I'd have to think through it. But I'm sure we got some options at our disposal. I'll have to take a look at it. So I thought the timer was a countdown for the night bosses. It was actually a countdown for night to begin. I should have been paying better attention on that. But I'll tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to play through an entire night cycle for no reason. That doesn't interest me in the slightest. So now that we got basic gliding, we can grab some hero points. So since there's one right up here, let's grab that one. Yeah, we'll follow them. I think they're probably... Well, maybe not. I'm not sure where they're headed. But I know where we're headed. which is this way. And there we go. So I think earlier when I was describing the masteries we would pursue, I said I wasn't interested in New Hawk. That would be inaccurate. The second level in New Hawk opens up the Wallows, and those are something that it's worth taking the time to unlock that. So that will be... And actually, is New Hawk stealth detection as well? Stealth detection, though less of a priority, is also something worth ultimately pursuing to some degree. Get up. So there are a number of hero points, not only here in Verdant Brink, but actually in the next map, Arc Basin, and the map after that, Tangled Depths, that you can access with only basic lighting available to you. That would not be true of Dragon Stand. You could, in theory, access 3 of the hero points in Dragon Stand with only basic lighting available to you. Another one, I suppose, if you had mounts. So mounts would change a lot of that, right? But if your only mount is Raptor, you know, if your mastery level is 2, like we're at right now, that's going to greatly reduce your ability to access many hero points. But there are some in Orc Basin that you can still access, and a small number in Tangled Depths that you can still access.
They'll have to hit much harder.
So if we'd made a thief, we probably could have just come down here, stealthed, and nabbed our hero point like that. For pretty much any other class, you're gonna... I knew that was gonna happen. You're gonna end up having to kill them, because if they pull you into combat, then it's gonna deny you the opportunity to channel the hero point. Another one of the great frustrations that some people had when Heart of Thorns initially launched, and they did take some steps, albeit less steps, they took some steps to address it. They didn't nerf it as hard as they nerfed like the overall difficulty level of Heart of Thorns, but they did put forth an effort to slightly decrease the difficulty of a few of the hero points. One of the more notable ones, which we haven't got to yet, is in the bottom left of the map. There's a frog, which still gives people considerable trouble. It gives me considerable trouble if I try to solo it. Again, not a hero, only a 0. But there used to be a champion, Mesmer. There's another channel hero point just off of that. I don't think we've uncovered any of that yet. Oh yeah, we did. Oh yeah, I forgot I was over there. So this one is the frog, gives people trouble. There should be one right about here. I'm not sure why that. We'll go over there. We'll figure it. Well, it's not where I want to be though. I want to be here. We can get there that way. That used to have a champion Mesmer sort of character at it. That really was rough, at least as rough as that frog. They got rid of that and made it just a channel, so that there was no longer any sort of enemy blocking that one. And they did throttle back a few. They did throttle back a few of the champions that defend some of these. I think in a couple cases might have reduced a couple of them to veterans. They left quite a few champions though. So generally Heart of Thorns is still considered the more difficult of the expansions. Pathfire is probably the easiest one to get the most hero points on relatively quickly. And then End of Dragons tends to kind of fall in the middle, where a majority of the End of Dragons hero points that are defended by elites, which are manageable, harder than veteran, less than champion. It certainly can be done, but can provide frustration. You know, if you have a relatively low skill ceiling, which certainly applies to some of us. This is the one that I'm referring to right over there, where he's gliding to, where we're about to glide to as well. There's also another mastery point for us, which is good, because we're going to need those as well as we advance. When you have only basic mastery, or basic gliding mastery, getting to the hero point from here feels a little bit tricky. It's not really that bad, but it feels that way the very first time. If we had some flying mounts or something like that, then we could take off from about right here and try to make our way back up here to get to another hero point that's over there. However, that is not the case at this time, so we just need to descend without killing ourselves, and then once again make the climb. This person might be headed to the same spot, which would be fortunate for us if they are, because this one here is one that I do struggle with at times if I'm by myself. Certainly can be soloed. There are two real critical things that you got to do. Someone's down there working on it now. Two real critical things that you got to do if you want to solo it. One is make sure to break the break bar when you get the opportunity. Use adequate CC. You can see the break bar right now is high. That's not where you want to be. He needs to get it down. He's a mechanist, so he's got ample, things at his disposal to do that. He needs to utilize them. The other thing you got to do is these little guys, these helitrons over here. You got to keep those down. You can't have those guys hanging out. They will. Well, as their name implies, they'll heal this guy, and you're going to have a much more difficult time with things if you allow that to happen. So, fortunately, someone was already working on this one, or two people, it looks like. We were able to piggyback off them, and that's good for us. So, just about at another breaking point. Achievement points, which I'm really not terribly concerned about. Did not incorporate achievement points into my criteria for a success in terms of our 0 to 0, simply because they reflect on the amount you play and how obsessively you pursue certain things, but not. Contrary to their name, I don't really consider them to be achievements. For a long time, I pursued them heavily, and then came to the realization somewhere around 20-some-odd thousand that I just... It was about the time I went to Afghanistan. I came back from Afghanistan. There were a lot of aspects of the game that I used to care about that I just didn't anymore. Again, unrelated to the Afghanistan experience, it just coincided with that part of my life. But Yeah, achievement points, not that big a deal. But the nice thing is when you hit a certain threshold on them, then you get things. And things are good. So, a lot of these things we don't care about. That bag we can hand off to another character. We got some loot here that we'll have to sort through and so forth. But not right now, because we've reached another breaking point. And this will be my stopping point for tonight. So when we pick up next time, then we can start looking at actually getting close-ish to going ahead and starting to utilize Reaper. Again, I'd love an axe and a focus before I do that, but we'll probably go ahead and start because the Shroud ability is so much better, and a significant part of why Reaper is my preferred class to play. So we'll pick that up next time. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Have a good evening.